But again, like this organization right now stinks. This team stinks. And part of why you stink is the last couple of years, you've stopped developing players through to your first team. So it just made me mad.
Yeah. Woo. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to episode 278 of Third Degree, the podcast of not Victory Pod. Sorry. There he is, your favorite, Dan Crooke. Howdy, Dan.
Oh, hey. How's it going?
Good. And you, sir? Anything new in your world you'd like to share with the curious?
Oh, let me think about it for a minute. No, I'm good.
Okay. And your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, editor, founder of thirddegree.net, and the original soccer influencer himself, Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hey, Peter, before we get into this whole thing, let's just mention that Thursday, we're recording on Wednesday. Thursday is the anniversary of Bobby Ryan's death, a guy that Dallas still misses, this club still misses, and they've got multiple people trying to fill his shoes, and they still are not living up to it. And he's missed every year and all the time. So just want to bring it up and mention him. Rest in peace, Bobby.
I appreciate you doing that, but man, that's a way to be a bummer to start off a podcast.
Yeah, sorry to bring the podcast down right out of the gate, but yeah.
Well, all of that feels like a perfect segue into the topic to discuss, which is last Saturday's game. Colorado comes back from behind twice to beat Dallas in Frisco 3-2. And I had this epiphany after watching the game, Buzz, that if you were to try to find a one game example that epitomized the frustration and general morbidness of being a fan of this club, if you were to squish all 27 seasons into one 90-minute performance, all the good and the bad, that might have been the game to sample it by.
Yeah, it really is, because I think that the things that plague Dallas in this game are things that often have plagued them over many, many years, which is they can from time to time play pretty well, but then, as Peter Luccin said, we weren't good enough in both boxes, and that's something that's been true of this team for a long time. And they've never been super great at closing out games against really quality teams. They've never quite been clinical and great in front of goal, and they've never quite been 100% a lockdown team. Not at the same time, certainly, as they've been good at finishing. And so you're right; it was a hard one to swallow. I'm sure it was a hard one for the team to swallow, particularly because things are clicking so relatively well, generally on offense, in macro terms up until this game. And even though they scored a goal or two, it was not good enough offensively, and it definitely was not good enough defensively.
Dan, is that the final nail in the coffin of this season?
I think that came a while ago, didn't it?
Maybe. I don't. Maybe it's a nail in the coffin. Maybe not the final one, but I think a lot of people were holding out hope that they still had a chance to make it into the playoffs.
It's the hope that gets you,
Well, mathematically, they still do. They need, roughly 11 points, which is not 4 wins. It's 3 wins and a couple of ties. So they have 7 games left, but you're going to have to play. I mean, to get 4 wins out of 7 games, or even 3.6 wins out of 7 games. 7 games. You have to play really, really well. I mean, that's well above 500. So,
all right.
And this team has not been doing that all year. I mean, it was doing that under Luccin, but then obviously here's a stumble, and the next 3 are tough. So they've left themselves a very, very difficult slate, but it's not officially over.
I think we're missing the real story here, and that is that FC Dallas can officially no longer mathematically get first place in the West.
Fair.
Pour one out for first place.
Fair.
All right. Well, okay. Yes. Cause I do think, Buzz, you make a very good point that the schedule does not make this path any easier for the
No.
team. And also some of the, intangibles like pause being gone and call ups for this next game, et cetera, et cetera.
Boy, yeah.
Also having to play it in a place that they historically don't play well in. It's on turf, blah, 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 blah. But let's, because part of what made the loss against Colorado such a fine example of the overall Dallas burn experience of the last 27 years is the fact that the team really did play well for large chunks of the season. In fact, I'd even argue that Musa goal was one of the nicest goal scoring sequences in club history. So let's talk about what they did well on Saturday.
Sure. Well, Luccin is maintaining some consistency, and when he was missing a player, Paul Arriola, I really like that he just brought in a player. He didn't move 4 pieces to try and compensate for that. He just went with the consistency from the previous game when they had won, and they just brought in Sam Junqua, who ended up being my man of the match. I thought he was terrific. He had a fake assist when his first shot fell to Farrington, and he had a real assist, which is the play you're talking about that went to Musa. That was really nice. And then he had another one where he set up Musa even easier than the one Musa scored on. And so the positive things are, and some of it's related to the way Colorado chose to play, but the passing was really nice and crisp from Dallas. They passed a really high percentage. There was lots of line breaking going on. There was lots of progressive dribbling, box to box. The performance was really good. All year, Dallas has been really good about denying transition opportunities. But in this game, that fell apart. And Colorado basically played the way Dallas used to play under Nico Estevez on the road, which was that they didn't really value the ball. But when they got the ball back, when they turned it over, they transitioned really quickly and then got it in the box and crashed the box. And that's exactly the way Dallas used to play, high percentage chances under Nico on the road. So, overall, enough shots were created, enough opportunities were created. They held Colorado to a reasonable 14 shots. And you can say box to box that they were the better team. Unfortunately, they were not the better team in the 2 boxes, as coach said.
Okay, sticking with the good things, I want to talk about the 2 additions to the team in Show and Huan. The latter of the 2 clearly is a better upgrade to this team than I anticipated. He really has integrated quite quickly and brings something that the team has lacked. I have no idea what the long-term plan is and the ability to sign him. I'm under the impression that part of the reason why he's here is that he wanted more money than Montreal was willing to give him, which doesn't bode well for Dallas signing him long-term, if in fact they choose to do that. And then Show, I think my assessment is that as good as or as impressive as he was in the first game, playing against a better midfield opponent this time, I think exposed a little bit more out of him, and probably it was. I would say he was in my mind. This was more of a Liam Fraser type performance.
I felt like it was a little better than that, but I think because the Rapids weren't very aggressive in midfield and played a relatively deep shape, that he wasn't able to do much progressive play. He kind of was in the game and that was about it. I didn't really take a whole lot away from him. He was definitely nowhere near as good as he was against DC, but he was still 2 for 2 on take-ons. He still had, 4 progressive passes. It was there. It just wasn't quite as successful as it was against DC, I think, because of the compactness of the Rapid shape.
And the DC's really bad compared to Colorado too.
Oh, yes, significantly worse. And again, the way Colorado chose to play, they made it difficult, and in the final third, more difficult from the final third for Dallas, and less difficult in the middle. But I would agree that it wasn't as good. I don't think it was as bad as Fraser. But I don't think Fraser's terrible. I just don't think that it was a good game for him to show effectively. Even Yaramendi, who was, of course, always awesome, still had some pretty good numbers, still had numbers better than Show, but it wasn't quite as high as Yaramendi is normally in a lot of categories, just because of the way the game presented itself. I mean, Dallas had big stretches of, possession that they're not used to having, and I think from time to time they got lulled into maybe passing it around a little bit too much. But at the end of the day, I would agree that Juan was amazing, and he was torching that rookie on the right, his Dallas's right.
Mm-hmm.
The final ball maybe needs a little bit of work, but that'll come with time. And not in terms of who's playing it poorly, just in terms of connection and understanding of how your teammates are going to play and how they want the ball and that kind of thing. So I'm not concerned about that. Overall, I agree with you that Juan was really good. His show was just average, but show's still 25 and still learning his way in a league and a team. So I'll forgive a step back in the second game.
All right. So this is the other thing I noticed quite quickly, and I don't know if this is something that I just haven't been paying attention or if in fact this was new. When they play three in the back under Peter, has Tafari always been the right center back and Ibiaga the middle center back? Has it always been played that way?
No, it's usually
Tafari.
Ibiaga's the right and Tafari's in the middle.
So what was the switch there?
I mean, I didn't notice that happened the whole game. Was it not just were they not just flipping in and out of
No, I thought
play?
It was the entire game. At least every time I paid attention, I was like, why is Ibiaga playing in the middle and Tafari out in the right?
I'm sure, the average position is showing that too. I didn't register that. I would imagine it has to do with, the certain qualities of other players, on the other team. Their center forward is kind of a very physical kind of player. Maybe they felt Ibiaga was stronger and would do a better job on him. I don't think he did, but Luccin did not bring that up in the post game press conference. So at this point, in his conference to talk to media will be tomorrow. So we won't, get a chance to ask him before then. So you are correct that generally Tafari is the center of those players. Jonathan Lewis is on the left wing for them, who's a, fringe of the national team level player. And maybe they felt Tafari could better handle him. Potentially that would be my guess. Cause you're right that is unusual. That's weird that I didn't register that. That's my bad.
Not at all.
I don't usually miss stuff like that. That's weird.
So I guess we should also talk about the elephant in the room, which was the very rare, especially this season, performance of one Martin Paz. This was not his best.
Yeah. I can't help but wonder if maybe he just had his mind on other things because it was not a good game from him. He particularly gave up a lot of rebounds on shots, and particularly he gave them up right back in front of him in the real danger area. And they got a couple of goals off of rebounds. Usually he's much more sure-handed than that, or pushing the ball to the side. I think he would probably agree that it was not a good performance on his part, and it definitely was not. That's what Coach was talking about we weren't good enough on the box on either end. There's been so many games where he's bailed this team out, and I have some bigger thoughts on him I want to talk about later. But I agree that this was definitely one of the poorer performances by Paz. What about you, Dan? How did you think of him?
Yeah, sloppy. The like you say, the two that you kind of pushed away that ends up leading to goals just didn't help. Obviously, the first national team call up, he left on. I think he left yesterday, so let me say Tuesday, since this is timeless. Yeah, that may have just been that on his mind. Who knows? But he's been so consistent that you can kind of give him the benefit of the doubt on. I think that's the second poor game he's had really this season.
Yeah, it's been pretty rare. And I also thought on the winning goal, it was a weird circumstance. Pause on, I think, how many times has it happened with him for Dallas? Is it 2 or 3 times he's come out to challenge for a ball and ended up getting a red card? Was it twice now?
Oh man, I have no idea.
I think it's
they've only had 1 red card this season.
Well, I don't mean just this season, because I think it dates back to last season. I can think of at least 2 times I think he's come out and challenged for a ball and ended up getting either a second yellow or a red. I'm not 100% sure. I know it's happened at least once, but that's what made me think about that particular incident on Saturday night. Was he almost pulled out of trying to do anything in that circumstance. I also think there's some poor communication between him and the whatever center back was tracking back to try.
It was Tafari.
Yeah. I think there was some poor communication there. But Pa's body language just appeared different from normal in that, and it made me wonder if he was trying to avoid what he had been guilty of before.
Well, certainly, the commentator I mentioned said that, like, he's got to come out and just clean that whole thing out, just take out everybody.
Yeah.
And certainly, like, if you're like, dude, I got to fly to Indonesia in 2 days for my first ever call up, I'm going to hesitate, whether it's conscious or subconscious. I hate to think that, but it's the way it happens.
Deion Sanders used to call that a business decision.
Yeah. And maybe in the heat of the moment, you're like, you're not even consciously doing it, but it certainly occurred to me as I was watching it. That's a situation where he usually would, a lot of keepers would just wipe out both those guys and just take the whole play out. You get your own center back, but you get the forward too, because basically that guy just kneed the ball and it went in because both Tafari and Paz sort of stopped, and hesitated. And that's a tough way to lose a game.
Oh my gosh. Well, it was a very Dallas way to lose a game that they should not have lost. And,
I mean, Yappy is a grown man. I mean, he's like 6'2", 6'3", approaching 200 pounds probably. So he is a bit intimidating. I mean, maybe Paz just didn't want to risk that contact, but
yeah, they said, I think they said on the broadcast, he's 6'4", 175.
Yeah. And it ain't like a skinny 175. I mean, he's built. So I can see people hesitating, not going to want to get run over by that guy. He's a handful.
Mm. Yeah, it was very unfortunate and an awful way to lose the game, but it was one of those weird performances. It was, I don't know if either one of you got to watch the game and listen to Warren Barton, who's been covering MLS
that's what I was talking
forever
about.
and ever. I mean, Warren knows this league just about as well as anybody else. And listening to Warren, who I guess now has done several Dallas games, kind of pick the team apart in the formation. That was one of the big takeaways when we start to talk about the negatives of this game. Was part of the reason why I'm a little down on Show's performance is, man, I just feel like for a 34-year-old guy, Illarra Mendy is being asked to do way too much on this team, Buzz. And
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, he ran the most again. I mean, certainly that's the thing. It's like anybody you put in next to him will suffer by comparison. That player needs to do a lot of work because Yarmeni does a lot of work, and you're going to look really poor if you don't do it. So, I don't.
But is Illarra Mendy doing that much work because he's having to do like 1.5 jobs?
No, I think it's just his nature. I mean, some of it is probably he's trying to make up for everybody else, but he's also a really fit guy and takes care of himself. So he's always played this game. It's not like this is unusual for him. And he was, of course, excellent. It's you can read off any stat you want. He was phenomenal, but and he's one of the things that every single game is really good. And it almost gets boring because he's so good all the time. And Warren was, of course, salivating on the guy, and I don't blame him because it's true. The guy's phenomenal. So if only he wasn't 34, but his performance he was not the problem. He was fantastic.
I also thought Barton's comment about Tafari was so dead on about it was because it's something that we've talked about here on this podcast multiple times about Tafari, which is he's this player with a lot of promise and attributes, but he's always going 100 miles an hour, and he just doesn't have a speed that lets him slow down and see what's going on around him and let the rest of the team kind of work with him. He's constantly in a state of it almost looks like he's in a panic state all the time.
Yeah, I would just say that he just doesn't have a lot of finesse. He just doesn't have a medium switch. It's only got a full-on switch or an off switch. Tafari does. So I think that's a valid criticism of the guy. It probably would help because I think Tafari feels like he has to do too much.
Yeah, I just
honestly
get the sense that if he would just take a beat and look for other passing options or quit, there's too many touches in his game. And I really think there is actually a really, really good player in there. He just needs some coaching to get that element out of his game.
Yeah, well, part of the problem is that he really feeds off of aggressiveness and having like a attack mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So it probably is hard for him to turn off that go mentality and then still play really well. He probably feels like he needs to play that way all the time. you know, I mean, for in his favor, they are making him captain when Ariel is out. I mean, there's a lot of respect for the rest of the team there. So, you know, and I do think he's Dallas's best defender, you know, regardless of the fact that I wish he could be better than he is, you know, with some finesse, with some flair. But, you know, at some point, I think he's not the issue with this team's defense. I don't think.
So at this point, you're mostly concerned about the team's defensive qualities than anything else.
Oh, yeah. I had an epiphany about this team watching this game. I think this team is a horrible defensive team and has been a horrible defensive team for like 3 or 4 years.
And so is that what justifies Nico Esteves's attitude and kind of direction of how he put this team together? As he was so worried about it defensively, he felt like he had to put them together that way just to protect it from itself?
I don't know if justifies is the right word, but I think that's what happened. You remember that the team defense was really bad under Luccin, and they fired Luccin because the defense was really bad. And they're like, we need to fix the defense. That was the thing, right? Mm-hmm. So we went out and got this coach, and Nico Esteves came in and said, okay, I'm going to fix the defense. So he fixed the defense with tactics. He made the team defensive first. He sacrificed offense for defense. They got Martin Paz, who is a keeper that covers up a lot of mistakes and helps make your defense look better than it is. So for the last 3 years, this team has put up really good defensive numbers, and it's looked good defensively. But the minute that Nico Esteves left and they stopped doing that, and Peter Luccin opened up the soccer to let everybody play a complete full game and try and be good offensively, then the defense instantly got exposed again. And now we see that again, this defense is not very good. So this is what I think this team truly is. If you're going to play a balanced game and try and score goals, then you're going to show this defense's true quality, and its true quality is not that good. And it's a personnel question, you know, and I don't think it justifies the way Nico Esteves played, but it certainly explains the way he played and explains why they weren't able to get a lot of goals, other than when Jesus was on fire by himself and scoring 18, and then he could do it and carry it. But other than that, they don't really have good offensive production.
This is more fun to watch, though, right, Dan?
I think so. Beats a snoozy 0-0, pass it around and do jackal.
Yeah, this is ever since Peter Luccin has taken over, this has been a much more entertaining team to watch, if albeit also frustrating at the same time. They've never lacked for goals in games, whether it be from them or against them. There's every game. I think what's the lowest scoring game that has happened since Luccin has taken over? Is it 2-1? Is that what it is?
Oh gosh,
I think that's correct. Hold on, I'm going to hit pause because now I want to know the answer to this. So I'm going to look it up real quick. Buzz, hold on. Don't go in.
1-1 New England. 0-2 against Juarez.
Let's see. So
2-0 against the Galaxy.
Yeah. 1-1. Yeah, with the New England game. Yeah. So I mean.
Well, that's the thing too, is like this team produces opportunities, right? They had, I put it in my breakdown, I think it was like 20 shots on goal, shots, which is lots of opportunity, but they only got 6 of them on goal, which is less than a third. And you compare that to Colorado, who had 14 shots and they got 8 of them on goal, which is over 50%. Mm-hmm. So we talk about this a lot with this team, right? You have to have good shooting efficiency. And in this case, they did take their time to get into the box, like something like 75-80% of the shots came in the box. So they did that part right. They just weren't performing. Like they didn't get their shots on goal. They didn't force saves out of the Colorado keeper, Stefan. So like the Colorado got 8 shots on target. They forced saves out of the Dallas keeper, and he gave up rebounds and they scored. So this is a perfect example of why it matters that you shoot efficiently, why you get the ball on net and you make the keeper make saves, and you cannot have this third or a quarter of your shots on target and expect to win games. If you fire it high and wide, you're not going to win. Mm-hmm. And even though they managed to get 2, they could have had many. They could have had 3, 4, 5, 6 if they would have got the ball on target, and they did not.
Yeah, it's in the last 4 league games, which are the 2 games after Leagues Cup and the 2 games after Leagues Cup. There have been 18 goals. They've averaged those 4 games have averaged over 4 goals a game between the 2 teams. And in those 4 games, Dallas is 1 win, 2 losses, and a draw. So that's what
that's not good, is it?
That's what they are under Luccin in the last 4 league games. And we don't even talk about the 2 Leagues Cup games.
Yeah, it's just those were so bad. It's they've had a pretty good run under Luccin. It's way more entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
He's surprisingly now seems to be locking into the 3-4-3, especially since he got Juan here.
Does that surprise you that he is stuck with 3 in the back?
Yeah, it does, because when I asked him about tactics, when he first took over, he talked about how he wanted to play the way his mentors plays. And so I looked up his biggest 2 mentors, and they all played 4 at the back. They played various versions of 4-3-3. And we saw all year what a struggle the 3 at the back was. It wasn't working. It was really poor most of the time. Well, part of that was because he didn't have wing backs. But now he's got Juan, and because he's got guys getting healthy, he can now use Paul Arriola as a wing back. Mm-hmm. And then they finally realized that Sam Junqua is a better wing back than a center back, and Marco Farfan is a better center back than a wing back, which is actually maybe not actually true, because he's not a very good center back. He's a really good outside back. He's a good outside back. He's just not. But Junqua's a better wing back because Junqua's better offensively. So he's actually got people that can play wing back, a couple of options. Luccin does. And so all of a sudden he's like, okay, that works. And then, he likes 2 in the middle because Illarra Mendy, being 34, can have somebody in there with him. That works a little better, and then some of the things that he's doing are probably related to where his best players are going to be long-term. And that's going to be how you get Jesus Ferreira and Musa and Farrington and Velasco all on the field and playing, which is a tough question. And Siki, because he loves Siki. So, he's going to have some tough questions up front eventually, but in the short term, the main reason I thought he would give up on it was because the 3 at the back had been so bad. Mm-hmm. But then they went out and got Rowan, and he's really, really good at a wing back. So looks like they're sticking with it for the rest of the season, basically.
So obviously the game had a bit of excitement in the fact that we saw the return of some players and a group of guys all on the field at the same time for the first time this season. So Petar Musa came back. Jesus Ferreira got introduced into the game at halftime, along with Musa. And then, of course, about 20 minutes later, Alan Velasco played the last 10 minutes of the game. I guess, first off, as I said earlier, that goal to make it 2-1, boy, howdy, that was a fantastic sequence. Jesus's pass was absolutely killer, but the entire thing was one of the best goals I can remember in this club's history.
Well, it even starts with Musa laying it off to Jesus, so he's at midfield, and he still gets up there. And the leading pass, you're right, from Jesus was just gorgeous. It's just a really quality goal. They've had some really nice goals in terms of that kind of team play this season. There was one that Matt Doyle tweeted out, I think it was against DC, where they almost went end to end with it. So this team is capable of that kind of thing when they're on. And that play in particular was you're right. It was beautiful. It was a really nice one. And that finish by Musa is next level. That was ridiculous, because his ball's going across his body, and to time that and have it be just the lightest sort of touch to that other side, let the momentum carry it.
Yeah.
That's really difficult, really hard.
So Musa obviously back from his deal. We'll just kind of run through it. Your reactions to Jesus.
Jesus, good signs on Jesus. He had, it was just like, how many minutes was it? Let me look real quick. 30 minutes of play, which was, not more like I was expecting. But in that 30 minutes, this time he had 5 shot creating actions and 1 goal creating action in just that 30 minutes. So that's a big improvement from the previous week when he had 30 minutes and made nothing. Mm-hmm. So that's really nice. That's good signs of life there. So I'm not worried about the direction he's trending. That's a good one.
I'm digging his growing out the Colombian mullet, by the way.
The mullet thing that he's doing, that is the weirdest looking.
He's always had a variation of that, but it's longer than it typically is. So kudos to him. I'm jealous.
Yeah. Oh, are you?
Yeah.
You can go for that haircut?
Well, no, just he's got all that hair. It's pretty marvelous. Yeah. It's like being jealous of Dan's beard.
I'm saying nothing.
By the way, Petar Musa now is 5th in the league in goal scoring, 14 goals, by the way, which is pretty marvelous.
Yeah, that's the most ever by a rookie, not a rookie. What's the word? Debut season. Mm-hmm. He passes Christ, and I don't remember who the other person is. Damian Alvarez, I think. But the thing is like the all-time season leading record for Dallas is not as high as some other places. So he, with 7 games, he easily could break the single season scoring record here, which I think is 18 or 19.
Well, just to put into perspective, he's 5th behind Banega at LAFC, who has 16 goals, but 7 of Dennis's goals are PKs.
Yeah. Honestly,
and only Moose's is 1, by the way.
Yeah. We should make the rest of the season about getting him the golden boot. Forget trying to win.
Yeah.
Just get
Well,
feed Moose.
He's only 3 behind Benteke. So
yeah.
If Dallas hadn't given up that crappy goal to against DC, he'd be only 2 behind him.
Yeah, I mean he could. That's fair. Golly, I can't do that. That's rude.
Sorry.
Yeah, he could have had another goal in this game if he hadn't boned that wonderful cross Junqua set up. It would have been the 3rd one for Dallas.
Yeah.
So he's culpable in terms of the not getting the ball on net problem that they were having in this game.
All right, so we saw Velasco for the first time motor out there. I thought
know what I'm going to say.
Huh?
You know what I'm going to say.
But he's fat?
Yes.
Oh, you thought he looked fat?
Yeah. He looks like a player that hasn't played in a year.
I didn't pick up. I don't know. I didn't pick up on fitness necessarily. I was just trying to see.
Oh, I did.
I was trying to see how his willingness to take on defenders and things like that. And he by and large appeared to be the same player in terms of what he's going to put out there.
Yeah, his mentality's there, his touch is there, the ball skills are there, but he was missing that tiny little explosive burst. Like when he made the cuts inside, the center back was able to block the cut. Like he had to like cut, and it wasn't getting a shot off.
Yeah.
Right. Usually he cuts and shoots, right? It wasn't there, and then, listen, it's ridiculous to say that, but what I'm talking about is like in the cheeks of a player who has sat around for a year, they did not have that cut, super low fat ratio, sunken in cheekbones. Like remember when Paxton came back, you guys made fun of me, but I showed you the 2 headshots and you could tell the difference between a player that's in season-long game form and one who's not. That's all it is. And Delgado's the same way. Like I almost didn't even recognize Delgado because he laid off for a month and a half and then lost whatever that cut look in his face was. He doesn't look the same. Mm-hmm. So, it's just a sign that players aren't game fit. It's not a criticism of them as people. It just means that like if you had a game this weekend that was like a must-win game, you could not start Alan Velasco. There's no way. He could barely play 15 minutes probably at this point. So, Delgado's the same way. Like neither one of them is anywhere close to being able to start a game.
So he gets 10 minutes here. Do you? And I know you'll talk about what you think's going to happen. We talked about this a couple weeks ago because the next game is on the road and it's on turf.
Yeah.
And it just makes me wonder, do you even bother traveling him for this game or?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause you're out of players. I mean, you're missing too many bodies.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
Yeah. And the same thing, you put him on the bench and if the late game situation allows it, then you bring on. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't, it doesn't, Peter Luccein's post-game press conference was telling. He talked about how it was the first time they had all 3 DPs on this season. He said, but those players are all really, really important. We have to be really, really careful. We have to be slow and methodical and careful. And what he said very specifically was the player that is the most fit will play, will start. Mm-hmm. So he means, and he doesn't just mean fitness. He means healthiness, right? So like, even Ferreira, who's looking better, like only got 30 minutes. So like there's none of those, Ferreira, Velasco, Delgado, none of those guys are going to start until they prove they're the more fit, better choice to play 90 minutes. That's kind of what he was saying. He was saying that like, yes, you want to bring them back, but you can't do it at their detriment and you can't do it at the detriment of the team because we're trying to win games. We got to have guys that can compete and play at the highest level that they're capable of playing. And right now those guys can't. Effectively is what he was saying. So I think that's telling that was like his number one quote about those guys was that fit, not, which doesn't mean fitness. It means, game, readiness, health, capability of being and fighting and all that stuff.
Yeah. There is a big difference between a guy being available and available, if you know what I mean. And in the bum rush at the end of the season, of trying to scrap for a playoff, the fact that you can't, while you have them on the bench, the idea that you don't feel like you can start Jesus or Velasco in those positions does not bode well.
Yeah, think about it if you're the coach, and if you start any of those three players right now, you have to sub them, period. So like, and that limits your capabilities in terms of what you're going to do to respond to the game. And really basically your games are all must-win games. I mean, no one's going to win 7, but you have to have a must-win one game at a time mentality if you're going to get this thing done. So, if they get eliminated, then you can have different discussions about, let's play some guys and try and push their fitness that way. But, when you're fighting for a job in his case, right, or fighting to make that playoff spot because that's going to get you the job, you can't just sacrifice games to get those guys back. You got to go. Your lineup has to be 100% on form and capable.
Would you tell anybody listening to this to hold out hope that Velasco will do something before the end of the season, or pretty much what we're getting is what you're going to get until you see him sometime in 2025?
Man, it's probably close to what you're going to get. I mean, obviously the more he trains and the more he gets, volume minutes that are going to push his fitness, the more likely he'll be able to contribute. The thing is like this late in the season, they're not training for that. They're training to maintain everybody and not get people more injured. They're not pushing long sessions and trying to really build a fitness base. You have to do those things in stages. Usually they happen back in the spring. You don't just walk in and play hard and then go, yeah, I'm back. Right. So, and Dan, I know you've seen a lot of this too, before many times. It's like, it's very difficult late in the season to come off of a long injury and be like, yeah, I'm game fit. Boom. You know what I mean? It's just.
Yeah, especially, I mean, the time he's got left is effectively pre-season. There's just not a whole lot of time to get match fit and build his confidence back up.
Yeah, man, it just all the more makes me, every time we talk about this, especially now that we're watching it play out, and it just feels like it was so predictable, the idea that they didn't just IR him for the season and replace him, it just makes me, it's so frustrating because it just seems so obvious that this was how it was going to go.
Yep. Yeah. Imagine how you feel if you're the guy that asked that question and then got looked at like you had 3 heads, like you were insane. Well, like, how dare you suggest we do that? And I'm like, I thought to myself, I can't believe you haven't thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, here's the other way to look at it. What if Dallas was having a really good season and was solidly a playoff team at this point, and Velasco got healthy all of a sudden? You'd probably feel even more stupid that you had wasted. Wouldn't you have rather have had a really good informed player helping you make a playoff push versus some kid coming off ACL surgery? Like the thinking behind not making that move just gets more and more mysterious. And it was either just incompetence in kind of assessing it, or they just didn't want to go out and it would have put them in a position to go out and have to spend a bunch of money to replace him.
Well, that's part of it. Barton talked about that, about, you can't, in this league, it's like having guys of that value and that DP stature, having those positions be empty, and his has been empty the whole year and Jesus has been empty half the year. It's just really handicaps your team. And that's the bottom line. And at least in the case, if you were having a good season, maybe you'd be like, you know what, we're going to give Velasco back and he's going to be a 10-minute threat guy for us off the bench as we make this playoff push because we're a good team already. So it actually might even be a little more palpable, swallowable if you actually felt like he could really give you something. But like what you need now is someone that can play a game and win a whole game. And he's not going to get that for you. Right. That's not what you need. There's a chance Jesus could do that. Jesus could get, push, if he can push past half a game, this game, and the signs of life he showed, if he can get back to where he can bang in a few goals for you on top of whatever Moose is doing, then Jesus can give you a real chance to have a starter who can do something for you. But I don't think, based on what I'm seeing from Velasco, I don't think, in 10 minutes, let's say next game he gets 15, but I wouldn't do it on turf, but 20 maybe. It's like, it's just going to be, it'll be 4 games left, maybe even less before he's ready to actually start. And even then he probably won't be like, I can go 90 minutes and be dominant,
Yeah. Before we leave the game, I just wanted to, I feel like this hasn't been talked about enough. I know we've talked about it a little bit, but just the resurgence of Lletget back to his quality.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh. Yeah.
I don't know if he's MLS 11 best level or anything like that, but he's better than just a dude now. He's a guy that is actually contributing and playing well. And he's just one tier down from being a real star, but it is so far from what we lost from him from the beginning of last season. It's really good to see. I don't know how or what's happened. I don't know if it was Luccin or if it's just him figuring it out on its own. It's really good to see him playing this well.
Dude, in this game, he was 98% passing, which is staggering, but that in of itself isn't important. It's the 11 progressive passes, 2 progressive carries, 4 shot creating actions. The dude is playing lights out. He's a lock starter on this team. Like, and a year ago, we were talking about how to get rid of him. And now it's like, dude, he's one of their best players. Yeah. Now I'm very comfortable keeping this guy going forward, even though he's at 30. 2 or 3, because he takes care of himself, you got 2 or 3 good years out of this guy. If he can maintain this level, honestly, and maybe there's something to be said for Illarra Mendy as an example to him of like, look, you can still do it if you take care of yourself. Right. Mm-hmm. And we knew all along, right, that when he was having the bad season, it wasn't about on field. It was about off field. It was about something with his mentality, his personal life. Right. We all know what happened and what it was all about. And now a year and a half later,
don't bring it up,
he's
Buzz.
now found
it hurts
himself
still much,
again.
Too much. Don't bring it up.
I know, but he's playing fantastic. And when we talked about this team being FC dudes, it was because none of the special players were being special. Well, in addition to guys coming back from injuries, you have some guys that just found their form again. And now Lletget is being special, and he's above that DP threshold, even though he's a buy down, he's above that line. So you need him to be special, and he is special.
Dan, anything about the Colorado game that you want to throw in there? Because you've been awfully quiet about it. It sounds like it broke your little heart.
Nah, I think 45 minutes is enough on it.
Okay. Very good. Well, let's move on to the task at hand, which is the aforementioned road trip to Vancouver. And I know I saw somewhere in your Discord people pointing out the fact that Vancouver's got a whole bunch of people missing for this particular game, but so does Dallas.
Yeah.
I mean, how many call-ups does Dallas have? 4?
Delgado is with Ecuador, which is not a big deal because he was hurt. Sante, who was a central midfield depth piece, is gone. But the 2 important ones are Paz and Show. And Show being gone makes Sante being gone more important, because Fraser's still hurt. So you're all of a sudden now you're really light in midfield again. So the 2 big questions, of course, are Jimmy versus Antonio Carrera in goal. Antonio played for North Texas last game. Saved a PK in the shootout at the end of the game to get the tie bonus point. Also had a moment or two that were slightly shaky. The question is, how much confidence do you have in Jimmy at this point? So that's a tough call.
Has Jimmy played yet this season?
I don't think so.
No.
I think Paz hasn't left or been suspended or anything. So that's a tough decision, and I can't even begin to tell you what they're going to do. My gut instinct is because Luccin's trying to win a job, that he'll go with the old standby veteran player and not risk a 20-year-old, even if it's a 20-year-old you think is going to be a good player for your team in the future. And then the other question is, of course, because Show is gone and Sante is gone and Fraser's hurt
and Delgado's
and
gone.
Paxton's hurt and Delgado's gone. That's 5 guys that could play next to Illarra Mendy. It's like, who do you put in there? Well, I think the easy answer is Lletget. He played really well back there next to Illarra Mendy a couple of times. So I think that's pretty straightforward. In fact, you could put Seek and Sebling back there. He used to do that under Nico Seves, but under Luccin, he does not. Under Luccin, he's been up high, been much better up high. So obvious answer for me is move Lletget back in there, unless you want to put Nolan Norris out. Nolan started for at center back for North Texas last game, which we need to talk about. So you could put Norris out there because then you don't have to change your front line. Then you could leave Lletget up high, but Farrington's playing really well. So maybe the answer is to put Farrington on up top with Musa and Siki, and then you can drop Lletget into midfield next to Illarra Mendy, and then you can play pretty much the same team you did before, right? Ariel will be back, so he comes back on for Junqua. Your back 3 is the same. Juan's the same. He'll want to do gangbusters up there, of course, in Canada because it's not Montreal, but it's at least a Canadian team. So I think that's how you fix relative term. Fix your two problems is that I'm going to guess Maurer and I'm going to say drop Lletget into midfield with that. That way Farrington starts and all's good.
Well, unfortunately, Vancouver did Dallas a favor by beating Austin in Austin last weekend, and Dallas did not capitalize on that. But they are 3-1-1 in their last 5 games, and they are in 5th place. They've had a really good season for Vancouver, and it will be a tough task with all the. I mean, it's just going to be a hard one to watch, I think, Buzz.
It is. The turf is never a good spot, and Vancouver's a good team. Dan can tell us a lot more about them. It's just like, the pieces that are missing for Dallas do create a bit of a problem, but I think it's a solvable problem, as we just talked about. The pause, of course, is the one that's really going to be the big issue. Hopefully Jimmy is up for it. But this is going to be a very, very difficult game. Dan, I know you know a lot more about Vancouver.
I think they're harder hit by international call-ups. They are going to miss 5 players. Ryan Gould, who is number 2, their second top scorer, top assists, designated player, Pedro Vite, Andres Cubas, Fafa Pico, who's having actually a pretty solid season for them, and Ali Ahmed. The big one really for them is Brian White. As of yesterday, he was still in concussion protocol. He is their top scorer with 12 goals, I think, on the year. Effectively, they're missing their entire front 5 in a 3-4-3 right now. So, they're struggling a little bit. They did sign Stuart Armstrong as a DP, who was with Southampton last year, played 6 years as a regular starter in the Premier League. 40 odd games in the Championship last year. Absolute assist machine. I think last year he had 6 goals, 7 assists.
He's a nice player.
Very, very nice player. He himself has said, hey, he's not match fit. He left Southampton in the summer. He hasn't played a game since. His time at the European Championships, he didn't play a ton. But, I mean, I think they've got 9 games left now, or 7 games left, whatever. They're going to want something from him starting this weekend. Especially,
I was just going to throw out there, because I'm always the one that throws out the glimmer of hope.
You're a fucking ray of sunshine.
Vancouver is crummy at home. They're 5-2-4. They are 12th in the West. They're only better than Houston and San Jose at.
They hate turf.
I guess they hate turf too. Amazing. So there's between Dan's injury list or absentee list and their home record. Maybe there's something for Dallas to hold.
That road record is incredible, though.
It is, as compared to Dallas's road record.
They're kind of a funky style of play as well. Do not run with the ball at all. Fewest runs into the box. Second fewest carries into the attack in third in the whole league. Second fewest progressive carries. They have the most completed crosses in MLS, nearly double FC Dallas. Like 50% more than FC Dallas has. Other than that, statistically, every category, FC Dallas and Vancouver are like within 2 places of each other.
Interesting.
You know who else has got a screwy record like that is Houston. They've only got 4 home wins.
Yeah, Vancouver's first in the West as a road team. 7-3-4. Wow, that is impressive.
You did it again. They're 7-4-3.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking at FOTMob. 7-4-3. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. That's nuts. I had been reverted. Yeah. Anyway. All right. So that's what you're feeling for the Vancouver game Saturday, and that is because it's in Vancouver. Don't forget, it's a late game. It's not till 9:30 on the Apple TV. So there you go. Maybe Dallas will actually wear their primary kit for this game.
Nah, they're better off in white playing against a team that plays in white. It works so well, conceding their red to play against a team in red.
All right. Let's. Anything else about that, Buzz, you want to get into?
Well, I want to get into something on the North Texas game that's related to FC Dallas.
Okay.
I think it's important. So the North Texas game this weekend, Carl Sante and Nolan Norris went down to that team, and I'm gonna point out something about the position those two guys played. But I think it's important to say that it's not about them as individuals. So what happened was Nolan Norris was started at center back, and Carl Sante was started at holding mid at the sixth. And by the way, at halftime, I think roughly they moved Norris back up into midfield. But here's the thing: the red flag it raises for me. Nolan Norris, after he was signed by this organization and Nico Estevez, they as an organization eventually decided that he was a six. That was his spot. They've been working him in the midfield. They've been developing him as a six. They didn't want him at center back. They didn't want him at left back. Carl Sante was a holding mid for North Texas SC for like 2 or 3 seasons, and Dallas was not interested. They didn't think he was good enough. And then they tried him at center back for like 4 or 5 games last year, or even earlier this year, even more. And they were like, wow, this looks great. That's interesting. Let's sign him. And they signed him. And then literally the next time I was practice, I had a conversation with Coach Nico Estevez about how great he looked at center back and how excited they were about his potential at center back. And since then, Carl Sante has played 6 games as a holding mid for FC Dallas. And he went back to North Texas and he started as a holding mid for North Texas. And Norris, who's the holding mid normally, was started at center back. And again, these guys are both sort of young. You can change your mind about where they want to play as an organization, but it raises the question, who the hell is making these decisions? Like, how is it that you're signing a guy and saying, this is the development path we're choosing? And then you have an interim coach take over and immediately not use either player in those positions. And then you send him down to North Texas to not be used in those positions. So I get the idea that you want to have coaches have freedom to try and win games however they feel they need to. But at the same time, it's like you're talking about developing players. These are not finished, complete players. So like, how is there not, who was in charge of deciding organizationally where players are playing and developing those players long-term for the betterment of the club? It just raised this massive red flag that nobody is doing that they just like, whatever you want. After I get you a player, I don't care. Do what you want. Right. And it just, that kind of thinking often happens all up and down this organization. You know, we talk about guys that are like, oh, that guy was interesting at playing this position. We're going to sign him for North Texas out of the academy. And then he doesn't play that position for North Texas. He plays somewhere else. And it just, sometimes it raises these red flags for me. It gets me all TED Talk preachy here on my soapbox that I'm like, you know, again, I don't mind if you change your mind about where Norris wants to play. I don't mind if you change your mind about where Carl Sante wants to play. That's okay. But to sign them to be certain things and then never use them in those positions, then why did you sign them? Right. There's a disconnect there. And it's just, and some people I know are pushing back like, oh, well, no one's he played center back for the U20s. I get that. And Carl's played a bunch for Luccin. Luccin likes him better holding mid. That's great. But again, like this organization right now stinks. This team stinks. And part of why you stink is the last couple of years, you've stopped developing players through to your first team. So, well, it just made me mad.
I get your frustration, but it's also reflective of how much this team has changed since Perea left. That entire structure that Oscar helped build has, by and large, just kind of eroded since his departure, which now was what, how many years ago? Almost 6 years ago? Yeah.
3 for Luccin and 3 for Nico Estevez. Yeah, and you can even go back. This is not a new problem. Remember when Brian Reynolds was signed with the idea that they decided they were going to convert him to right back, and then the first couple of times he got into a game, they put him on a wing. Right? It's like, okay, maybe you can give me reasons why an individual, you know, you can, I don't want to bring him back a defense and put up high. It's not going to be a deal if he burns us or whatever. But it's like that was one guy, not multiple guys. And it makes me scratch my head. Like I looked back at the press releases from this summer signings, both Cho and Juan. There are no quotes. There's no statements by a TD or an owner or a head of sports or a head coach. Nobody's talking about why these moves were made and what they're going to bring to the organization. I mean, the digital media guys did it. They wrote about what the guys bring and what they're going to bring to the organization. But like, I'm just sitting here going, who's in charge? Like, who's making the decisions? Is it the interim coach making all these calls? A guy who might not be here in another month and a half? I just got really frustrated by that. Particularly because I think Carlos Sante is being done dirty, because I don't think Carlos Sante is an MLS grade holding mid. I think he has potential to be an MLS grade center back, and they will not play him back there. Since they've signed him, they only played him at center mid, which was the thing they were not interested in the whole time he was with North Texas.
Do they play 3 in the back with North Texas?
Yeah, usually.
Oh, okay.
Because they tend to imitate the first team. So if the first team's doing a standard formation more often than not, then they tend to follow.
So it's not because he hasn't been playing as a right center back or in a 3 or anything like that.
Well, that's the thing with Nolan, is like they put Nolan as I think he was the left center back for North Texas, which is what he did at the CONCACAF for the U20s. But most of the time, he's at the U20, he plays left back. Well, they know they don't want him there. And like I said, they had to make an adjustment because North Texas proceeded to get stomped early by Colorado, and they had to make an adjustment and put Nolan up into the midfield and try and get back in the game. Mm-hmm. And they brought in a couple of subs, and it all worked, and they got back in the game. I said, well, why was Nolan not playing in the midfield? Why now all of a sudden are we now trying to make Nolan a center back? Other than if organizationally they've changed their minds and they want to go a different direction, that's okay. But nothing in the entire organization has indicated that is the thing, And so it's, he trains as a midfielder for North Texas SC. For FC Dallas. As far as they know, they just sent him down there and stuck him in the back. It's just weird.
Well, there's been an interesting conversation that's been taking place that I've been watching in your Discord. I think it was today, about Luccin and people's attitude about whether or not they think he's the right guy for the job and whether they're comfortable with him taking the gig. And it appears, by and large, that at least in your Discord, Buzz, the curious have decided he's all right. We'll go ahead and take him, which feels, which I think is good and also a bit depressing all at the same time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because I think you feel like people are saying that it's about the best we're going to get, and I actually think that Luccin's done a pretty decent job, but I agree with that assessment. That it's very unlikely there's something better available unless you go out and try and buy somebody out. I don't think there's going to be somebody calling that's going to outdo what Luccin does. The bottom line though is the people that have to be convinced there's only 2 of them. It's three, the 2 Hunts, Dan and Clark Hunt and Andre Zanata. And if they're not convinced, then he's not going to get it. And the thing is they sat in that press conference when they fired Nico Stefes and said that this is a playoff team. They drew the line, right? It was make the playoffs, do some good stuff in cups, and then you can get the job. And he's playing for this job. They set the line and they said, this is a playoff roster. So unless they've moved the line, he's pretty much going to have to get in to get it. So it may be that it's a moot point whether we all think that's probably the best option available. Are there, I hate to use the word egos, but are they going to be willing to accept that we think this is a playoff roster, therefore if you don't make it, we'll still keep you? I don't know that they will they have changed their thinking enough to believe that that's no longer the case? If they get to the end of the season, they're like, oh, okay, maybe it's not a playoff roster. So, okay, Peter, you're good.
Yeah, I think it's disappointing that there's almost like this Stockholm syndrome going on within the fan base, because everybody's just okay settling hiring another guy that doesn't have any experience and thinking he's okay for the job. Sure, Luccin's done some really nice things and gotten some players to play well, but it's happened so many times where they've gone out and hired a guy that is using this as a career resume builder and not somebody that actually knows and says, I've done this before, that I just feel like it's the insanity thing. We're just doing it all over again. And that's where I think I get frustrated for the fans who are like, well, considering what else is probably going to come down the pipe if we, he's probably the best choice. So let's just go ahead and stick with him. And I think that's kind of a bummer.
But I don't think that they're necessarily wrong, because I think that
they're not wrong.
If I buy
Buzz, don't get me wrong, they are not wrong for feeling this way. But it sucks that is the default setting that we all have to fall into, because we know we're not going to get better.
Well, for me, I like the way guys are responding to him. I like the offensiveness of what he's bringing to the table. I like his interest in playing kids and getting the academy pipeline going again. He knows the system. He knows his club. Unless you're going to money whip Quill, I'm to the point now that I'm like, great, let's go, Luccin. What I'm saying is, I don't know that they are. They drew a line in the sand. Are they now going to wipe the line away and draw the line again somewhere else, like easier to get across?
Yeah, but here's the question I have, and is if Nico Estevez wanted to, here's the reality. They're 1-2-1 in their last 4 league games. They are bleeding goals at an exponential rate. They're scoring a lot more goals too. But I have this weird feeling that Nico Estevez is just looking at the TV going, yeah, I could have played that way too. And we'd probably be in the exact same position we're in now. And so I was trying to get us in a better position by playing more defensively. So again, I agree that he has this team playing more entertaining soccer, but I don't necessarily know if I feel like this is some sort of indicator that he's the right guy for the job or a better manager.
Yeah, no, I don't either. I think he's dealing with a slightly convoluted deck too. Dan, where are you on all this?
Let's see. Yeah, I think I'm with the consensus. They're not going to go out and get a world beater. It wouldn't make sense. They don't get out and get world beating players. He's doing a pretty solid job. There's been a few misses, but it's not really the best year. It's not like he's inherited a supporters shield winning roster with 5 games to go and a lead to give up. It's, hey, there is actually 0 chance of the playoffs. Wow, you've got it to within a couple of points. Okay. Yeah, he's situationally the best candidate right now.
It's best example of my point right there.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's not so much if you think about Man United, right? If Erik ten Hag does absolutely horrible this season, doesn't have an FA Cup to fall back on, the fans go nuts, right?
Mm-hmm.
They demand change, and maybe Ratcliffe listens to them. Maybe he doesn't, and fans go on about, we need change further up.
That might happen already before Halloween.
Yeah,
this rate.
The Hunts aren't going to listen to that. They're not going to care. They're not ever going to consider selling or rocking the boat. So, yeah, it's settling, but it's the reality of the situation is there aren't going to be earth-shattering, paradigm-shifting changes and suddenly, Pochettino is brought in or something crazy.
No, again, that's exactly my point. Is that I don't know. It's frustrating. It is really, really frustrating, and it's disappointing that we can't have the hope that they'll figure out a better way of moving forward with the coaching thing. I think I felt like they tried to do that with Estevez. He was kind of an out of the to some degree an out of the box hire for them. He didn't necessarily have that much more experience or a higher level of experience, but he was at least somebody outside unfamiliar outside the family.
I think one thing as well to consider is, Buzz had mentioned it, kind of knocking down and getting away from everything that Oscar was brought in to rebuild and to get up to that place, right? That pipeline. Well, Luccin's a guy that is fully immersed in that.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 2 players in the first team squad that played for him as 13-year-olds. If anyone's going to kind of get it back to that place and be willing to go with the homegrown city mantra, it's going to be him. It's not going to be someone like Nico that comes in from the outside and like, you know what, I have no loyalty to this system. I'm just going to try and do what I think.
Peter, I do think it's 100% fair or correct your take and your feeling. I think it's 100% okay to feel that way and also recognize that probably Luccin's about the best you're going to get. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like those two things can both be
They
right.
absolutely
you know?
can both be
Yeah.
true. But I am, but
Yeah.
but I also, at the same time, like I said, I don't know if there's any real evidence. The changes that he's made have made this team more entertaining, but it hasn't made them a better team. You see what I'm saying? Like they're still losing a lot of games and giving up a ton of goals.
Yeah.
This isn't a sustainable path forward. And I don't know. And I feel like he's getting a lot of credit for getting guys to play better, but they still are unlikely to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think what is it 6-5-1 now under him in the regular season play.
Yeah.
You know, so you know that's slightly better than they were before. You know, it's above 500. So you know, they're if you extrapolate that record out over the course of the season, then that is a playoff team. You know, so I grant you that there's a lot of issues still. You know, and he's definitely sacrificed some defense for some offense, which has been a lot more fun. So, you know, again though, I hate to beat a dead horse on this. It's like we're not the ones that are deciding this. It's like have the Hunsons and Anna move the line because they publicly stated what the line was. So you know, is Luccin even going to get a shot at it? Like if he doesn't get in the playoffs, are they even going to consider?
Well,
it's hard.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the people whose jobs should be on the line are the two people whose jobs are not on the line.
Yeah, probably.
Two terrible hires.
Yeah, I did look up the winning percentage of the technical directors that have been here. Zanata has the lowest winning percentage of the three.
Yeah, and Dan hired him.
You know, yeah. So
I didn't do it.
No, not yet.
The previous two, Gorman and Clavijo, both had about 1.5 points per game, and Zanata's is about 1.3. Now, granted, they're not responsible for what the coaches do, but you know, they're in charge of football as an organization, so. In the end, there should be responsible.
Ultimately, Zanata's doing what his reputation suggested. He's getting good money for players outgoing. He's bringing in cheaper pieces, and there's a net gain sort of. It depends what they're looking for. Do they want a winning team, or do they want a playoff team that isn't a complete cash drain?
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go. 9:30 Saturday night. Let's see what happens.
Fire up.
Whatever. Last but not least, Dallas Trinity had their game against Barcelona last Friday. A whole lot of weird talking points about this. I don't know. Dan, you were actually there.
I was.
What are your overall observations of that particular evening?
I mean, 5 of the players that played in that game just got nominated for the Ballon d'Or today. So, you know,
none of which play for Dallas Trinity, though. We should
unsurprisingly. But you know, you got to see 60 minutes, the first start of preseason for both Alexia Putellas and Aitana Bonmati. That's 3 Ballon d'Ors, the last 3 Ballon d'Ors in existence, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Patricia Guillaro. She scored. I can't remember exactly how long she played, but you know she's nominated. Caroline Graham Hansen came on as a sub, and I'm gonna butcher this because it's Polish. Ava Pajor came on as a sub late in the game. You know they lost 6-0. Barcelona have failed to score at least 5 goals once, and that was against AC Milan. In preseason so far. They have battered teams, and that's the strongest lineup they've put out in preseason so far. So, interesting game. Kind of encouraging on the Dallas Trinity side is they want to play out the back so badly. Amber Brooks said after the game that's their identity. It's hard to get out of, but they did start to go long at some points in the game. They did get a few attacks on goal. The crowd went absolutely crazy. I guess, you know, addressing the crowd, 5,000 and some announced. Honestly, it looked like butts in seats. It didn't look like the inflated tickets distributed number. Obviously, 80% of those people are wearing Barcelona jerseys because Dallas Trinity doesn't sell jerseys yet. Kind of a little bit of a missed opportunity there. I will say, though, going down to field side towards the end of the game, a lot of people in Barcelona jerseys holding Dallas Trinity signs. A lot of people in Barcelona jerseys trying to call over Dallas Trinity players by name to get autographs. There is an awareness among the women's soccer crowd in Dallas, apparently.
All right. So I am, I don't want anybody to misunderstand my mood, my feelings about this, because I am very excited about this team and I'm very hopeful about its future. But considering it was Barcelona, I don't know what the takeaway is that they only got 5,800 people to show up for that game on a Friday night.
I think the only takeaway you can have is this weekend. That was the first night of high school football in Texas. That's that's a serious contributing factor. It was Labor Day weekend, so a lot of people. I mean, there's people in the Discord who bought season tickets and they didn't go because they had Labor Day plans. Mm-hmm. They were heading out of town. The whole third party thing was a little bit weird. The ticket prices were up and down. It was a little bit disorganized chaos between it's Never Say Never was the promoter and Fair Park. The Dallas Trinity people just kind of standing in the middle watching everything go between those two sides was a little bit interesting to see. It's a difficult one, and they've got, I think their schedule is going to play against them quite a little bit because they've got a Wednesday game, a couple of Friday games, a couple of Sundays. I think maybe 2 or 3 Saturday games. Everything avoids FC Dallas's schedule, which is smart. It's incredibly smart. I mean, that's the biggest game in town as far as soccer. You avoid that at all costs. But yeah, I've had some people express to me that schedule just isn't conducive for them doing anything other than watching the team on Peacock.
Yeah, it's playing in the Cotton Bowl is cool, but it's also a real problem just because of the fact of its just immense size. And even, when the Burn was playing there back in the day, remember, it was when the Burn played there, it wasn't a 92,000 seat stadium. It was a 75. Was it 75 back then, Buzz?
Oh, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. So, exactly. I mean, it actually is an even more, there's even more empty space now than when the Burn played back then. Yeah. And I do worry about their decision to play there and what it's going to end up doing in terms of the vibe and how much people want to go attend the games there. It's all very much TBD. And Dan, you're probably right. This weekend's probably a much better barometer to decide how this thing's going to go. I don't know I don't know. I would think if I was the Neal family, I would have been disappointed at 5,800 for Barcelona.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's also a little difficulty that they're undergoing that renovation. I think it finishes August of next year. Perfect example is my parking pass for the media lot was gate 5, lot 5A, the one that's by the lagoon. You walk across and then you're at Combo. Or if you do like the Broadway Dallas shows, it's that parking lot. Mm-hmm. I got there and the gate was closed. Speaking of John Arnold, he was parked in that lot. I was not. I got sent round to gate 2, which is, I don't even know what that parking lot is because it's that really long one that goes down by the livestock shed. So I had a 3/4 mile walk from where I parked to the stadium.
Good Lord.
It's a construction site, right? I was talking to one of the Fair Park security people and they said, hey, we honestly didn't think that this side of the stadium was going to be accessible. They thought the press box, we were going to have to go through the whole stadium for the press box. But on the day, the contractors moved all of the equipment from where the staging area was to, I think they put it in like where we normally have media parking, lot 12. I had to walk through the construction site to get to the press box elevator. It's, on the side the fans go in, there was one entrance. So there was a team store bit set up. There's not that whole... You know how when Jerome Elenes came in, They started doing the little tailgate activities on Dr. Pink and expanded the stuff on the north end at Toyota Stadium. Try and make it more engaging, try and get families a little more involved. There's just no space for any of that. That's going to be kind of difficult for them. It would be a very cool to have the open space to encourage people to tailgate, to kind of have something organized, be a little bit more engaging as a club with the fan base and build that rapport. But that just doesn't seem a possibility, at least for the next year.
Well, they have their home opener this Saturday night at 7 o'clock. You can go to the Cotton Bowl, check the game out, then pedal home real fast and watch Dallas play on TV against Vancouver. The Trinity game is also on Peacock, by the way. So tickets are on sale if you want to go to that.
And it may be a pretty good game, a good bounce back game for Dallas. It's against DC Power FC. They've played 2 games in the league. They haven't scored a goal yet. They've lost 1-0 at Carolina Ascent. They had a goalless draw at Tampa Bay Sun, who Dallas absolutely dominated and really should have won against. I think the only real player of note for them is Katie Duong. She was really, really solid US Under-20. Played last season with Minnesota Aurora in the USLW League and took the step up. I think she was drafted by the Portland Thorns. They're just, it seems a game that Dallas should succeed in.
Okay. Well, we look forward to that. And we get to see their new kits for the first time, at least the home ones, right?
Hey, the away with the Black Sox was an interesting change-up.
Yeah, I think the Black Sox are what they're going to wear with the highly predictable shorts and shirts that are about to show up that I've seen the mock-up of, but they have not revealed. And I know they've done a series of sponsor announcements, but they haven't announced the actual game jerseys yet, have they?
Not that I've seen.
No. Okay. All right. Very good. Well, best of luck to them. Rooting for them. Go Trinity. All right. Anything else, boys, before we knock this one out?
Well, North Texas SC became the first MLS Next Pro team to clinch a playoff spot. They're in first place.
Congratulations.
Still. They're quite good. Even there's a bunch of guys that are signed to homegrown deals who I think are going to over the next few years be parts of the first team. So they are enjoyable to watch. They are better than most teams they play down there. And the second thing is that your buddy Michael Hitchcock is doing another pro team here. Yeah, pro team here in Dallas. It doesn't have a name yet, but you can go over for the team name. It's going to be in McKinney. It probably will play in NPSL, but I don't know if that's determined yet. It's that kind of team. It continues to invest in local small community pro teams. And so there's going to be to another NPSL level team here in Dallas for people to watch. So it's worth a mention. If you're up in the McKinney area, it'll be your Vercaros or your Denton Diablos, and your mileage may vary depending on whether
with
you like
a worse name.
Local soccer. Well, it depends on what name they pick. But
I don't know.
I didn't love any of the 4 options myself, but
the badges all look cool, but the names don't.
All right, boys. Well, very, very good. This is a good hour or so of Dallas talk. All right. Anything else? Going once, going twice. All right. Very good.
Sold.
Dan, thanks for all the good insight and sharing your experience at the Cotton Bowl the other day.
Thank you for keeping it all on track and making us sound happy and good.
Buzz?
Not happy.
Well, I know what you mean. Yeah, I get you. My pleasure, Dan. And thank you, Buzz, as always. You're the best, bud.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate you guys both being here for this.
And are we going to kick this thing to, does the day later release of this start next week?
It probably starts next week. We'll probably record on Thursday next week with a pod dropping on Friday.
All right, there you go. All right, FC Dallas Curious fans, keep your chins up. Let's see what happens this weekend, and we will speak to you next week on another episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
New schedule, same optimism.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.